Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the first of three panel discussions we'll be hosting. Today's topic is the relationship between managers and leaders and employees. By way of introduction, my name is Ken Somers. Briefly, I spent 40 plus years in major corporate HR departments, and about 4 years ago, went out on my own, created my own firm, Somers HR Solutions. But today is not about me. Today is about our panel. And let me introduce some very distinguished guests. First, Ali Shami is a former senior manager at the Boeing Company, where he led teams in operations, customer service, customer engineering, sales and marketing, product development, and other areas. He is the founder of FTD Global, which provides training in cultural sensitivity and leadership. He recently co-authored the book, Partnering Successfully with American Firms, with Stephen Howard, one of our other panelists. I'm also delighted to introduce Philip Berry, who has over 30 years of human resources experience, including 13 years in senior HR roles at Colgate-Palmolive, including HR Director of the International Business Group, VP of Human Resources for the Latin America Division, and VP of Human Resources for Europe. He has worked in 60 countries. That beats even me, Philip. And today runs his own executive consulting and personal branding consultancy. He has also served on the boards of the City University of New York and the Asia Society. Philip is also the author of the top-selling book, Being Better Than You Believe, 8 Steps to Ultimate Success. And lastly, but certainly not least, let me introduce Stephen Howard, who is an award-winning author of 25 nonfiction books on leadership, personal and professional development, business growth, and decision-making. He has coached, mentored, and trained over 12,000 supervisors, managers, leaders, and executives, and entrepreneurs across the globe. He brings a unique multicultural perspective, having lived in Singapore, Australia, and Mexico City, and worked in Asia, Europe, the Middle East, South Pacific, and North America. I think we're only missing Antarctica, Stephen.
Pretty much.
Good enough. So with those introductions out of the way, I want to go right to our panel discussion. And as I mentioned at the outset, the topic today is the relationship between managers, leaders, and employees. So the first question I'd like to pose to the panel is, there has been a report that the Great Resignation 2.0 will soon be upon us. And as we all know, people quit bosses, not companies. So why is it so difficult for leaders and managers to treat people right and be people-centric leaders? Philip, let me go to you first.
No, good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken. And also Stephen and Ali, really glad to be here with you for this discussion. What we need to do, all of the companies that I've worked in, when I look across the corporate realm, I see that people are indeed at a point of inflection where they're going to decide, do I stay where I am? Do I do something differently? How do I do that? And so if we see individuals who are looking to leave a company, it's because the reward system that is in place for leaders and managers is not necessarily to keep people, it's to increase sales, increase profitability. And people get promoted primarily based on that. And so when you see that there are people who are leaving, it's because there are not conversations that are taking place that help people to understand how they can continue their value proposition and improve not only themselves, but at the business that they're working in simultaneously. That's an important piece. So that's why this is a very important thing for us to take a look at, especially after the pandemic that we just went through. We see that there is more of an emphasis on people trying to decide what they're going to do for themselves, and maybe less of an emphasis on what they can do for the company that they're involved in. And what we need to do is we need to change that equation so that people can see that they can jointly optimize their performance and the performance of the organization that they're working in.
Good deal. Philip, if you don't mind, just a quick follow-up before I go to one of the other panelists. And you touched on the pandemic as it relates to the potential of a Great Resignation 2.0. A lot of people, I think, anecdotally believe that that the pandemic was the cause of the Great Resignation. And I just wonder if you could share your perspective on that.
I think that there are a number of situations when you look across the economic realm where organizations are going through different changes that are taking place. And it's caused by different societal events, political events that are occurring. And so it just happened that there was an inflection that took place with the pandemic which caused people to begin to look at their own situation and look at what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it. And so it brought about a crisis with a number of individuals taking a second look at themselves and what they're doing and how they're doing it. So the pandemic necessarily didn't do that. But I mean, we had the depression, we had wars that are taking place. There are all of those type of what I call critical social events that always have occurred throughout history and will continue to occur later on down the line.
Thanks for that. Stephen, your thoughts on that question?
Well, on the second part, Philip's touched on some really important points there. People reevaluated just where work plays in their lives, how important it is. And I think one of the things, I think this was happening before the pandemic, but the pandemic put this on steroids and it speeded it up so that people reevaluated their lives during this pandemic and how important is my job? And, am I willing to commute 45 minutes, 60 minutes each way, twice a day to go to some place that I'm not really all that happy at? Yes, I get a nice income, but you know what? I found out that if I move to another place and I drop my living cost by 20%, I can drop my income by 20% or something and take a lower paid job. So I think that's good. I think going back to your first question about why is it hard for managers and leaders to treat people right is they've never been told to treat people right. They've been told to get, in the 1990s and the 2000s, we used to admire people who got the most out of their people, work them to the bones. And that's not acceptable today. I mean, we can't have people being burnt out in the workplace, although it still happens. Leaders and managers need to change their mindsets, in my mind, Ken, in that you manage projects, you manage things, you manage policies, you manage procedures, but you don't manage people. You lead people. And yeah, maybe 10% of the time you need to manage people. But if you're managing people 80, 90% of the time, you're not going to get great success. So you're not going to get the most out of them that you want. You won't get your results. And the last thing I'll add to that is research from around the world shows that trust is very low in the workplace, and less than 50% of people trust their managers. And usually that's around 30 to 35% in most surveys. And so leaders need to build trust with their employees. So thanks for kicking off with a great question.
No, I'll say amen to your response, and as well as Philip's. So let me move on to our second question. And this is really for all of you. But let's start with, with Ali. Ali, you have talked about the vicious path impacting the workplace. Could you please explain this and why leaders and managers need to be aware of it?
Yes, thank you, Ken. Good morning. I was really looking forward for this discussion because I always walk away learning so much. I'm listening to you, Stephen and Philip, and talking about the impact of what we're dealing with, the Great Resignation. And it seems like nature pushed us out of the frame to look at the picture. As Stephen mentioned, it's always been there, but it really got us to think like, oh, this is how I look like in the picture. I've been within the frame for such a long time. And vicious path just simply defined as a lot of leaders, and especially in organizations, you will see the first line leader is helping the employee, thinking that is definitely the right thing to do. They're struggling. I'm going to jump in and help them out. And then their senior manager sees their first line manager is engaged with their employee. So they jump in and they start helping them. And the executive that they see it, they look at their senior manager like, well, my senior manager need help, I need to do the same thing, and so on and so forth. So if you look at an organization, you will see everybody is helping, leaving their role and helping others to get their work done, which there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is staying there for a long time. So vicious path is people doing their employees work on behalf of the employees going like, okay, if my manager is jumping in and micromanaging me and doing all that work, I'm gonna relax. And then the senior manager does the same thing. The opposite, the virtuous path, is the other way around, is deciding and knowing why leaders need to be really aware of that, because they need to know when to jump in and help employees and when to stop and let them go through the experience and probably make mistakes, and that we all know that experience doesn't come without mistakes, either mistakes or others' mistakes. So that's what I mean with the vicious path.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. Philip, I think you wanted to add some comments to that.
Well, the issue that we have is that organizations need to understand how you really can improve the culture and improve people. And you improve people by putting in place a development type of a culture, by being able to have skills that give people the type of feedback that they need. One, two, being able to give people responsibility. And if they fail on something, then give them feedback so that they understand that maybe I could have done that differently. Take away the penalties that come from quote unquote failure and let that turn to learning. That's what we need to do, to have more situations in place where the manager, where the person who is above an individual is leading, because they are fostering an environment of learning and development, and that helps people to grow from where they are to another point that you want them to be in. That's where we have this vicious cycle where people feel, well, I can do this the other way, and let me micromanage you, in terms of what you're doing, how you're going about it, do it my way. That eliminates the need for individuals to discover, to experiment, to develop innovative ways of doing things, to in fact contribute new thoughts and ideas that might move an organization forward.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. With flatter organization structures and high employee turnover, what other problems do organizations face in building stronger leadership teams? Let's start with Stephen.
Oh, thanks, Ken. I will just build on what Philip was just talking about. Micromanaging people. No one wakes up in the morning, Ken, and says, I can't wait to be managed by my boss today. And certainly no, I've never heard anybody say, I look forward to being micromanaged today by anybody. So letting people make mistakes. Google did some great research, I think probably 2 years ago now, that showed that the number one factor in successful teams and collaboration is creating psychological safety within that team. And that psychological safety was more than just making people accepted. It was more than diversity and inclusion. It was knowing that you could make a mistake and not be ridiculed by your peers. It was knowing that you could throw an idea out in a meeting and people wouldn't laugh at it and knock you down or say something like, well, no wonder you think that, you're from accounting, or yeah, all you bean counters think like that, or something along those lines. So removing that dismissiveness from the workplace is so critical. But I tell you, Ken, I mean, you've hit on a really good point here, and I'll turn over to Ali in a minute, I think, but this is why the return to office is being implemented. I mean, I saw Amazon announce this beginning January. Everyone has to return to the office, but it's also why employees are resisting return to the office. Managers want employees to return so they can micromanage them. And as I said, no one wants to be micromanaged. No one really wants to be managed. They want to be led. They want to be mentored. They want to be empowered by their managers. So Amazon, everyone else, if you want people to go back to the office, teach your leaders to empower their employees, to trust their employees, to create that psychological and safe environment for them. Otherwise, people are going to come January be looking for new jobs. And that's why Great Resignation 2.0 is going to hit us.
I really like.
I want to go to Ali, but I'm like, Ali, good luck topping that.
I know that's what I love what I just heard. I mean, absolutely. No one wakes up in the morning and say, "Let me see what I can make somebody's life miserable." Which reminded me of a conversation I had with one of my mentees yesterday, and we were talking about micromanagement. And he looked at me and he said, "Ali, I have a secret for you." I said, "What?" He said, "I don't mind to be micromanaged if I need help in specific things for a short period of time." So it's the micromanaging piece. It's just that takes for a long time. People get tired. It's like when I don't want to micromanage you, so I'm just gonna see you running and you're about to fall off the cliff. Oh, I don't want to micromanage you. That's not good. So again, it's just skill of jumping in and be able what to help. And so your question is, what problems do organizations face in building stronger relationship teams? It's a lot of times, from what I've seen, is it doesn't, the leaders or people leave, attrition, and they'll be like, I got a better opportunity, I'm going to go somewhere else. So leaders are really good at talking about values, talking about vision, talking about strategies, missions, strategies, smart goals that they want to achieve. But there are three things that are so important that many people get burnt out and leave. And that is, first one is the sense of belonging. Where people feel like I'm part of the team, I'm cared for, I'm one of the team, I'm being communicated with, I'm not just a number. And the second thing is, my leaders, my organization is giving me everything I can to be competent in doing what I'm doing. That skill. And the most important thing, I think, in my opinion, and have that autonomy where I have control over my future, control over what I need to do. I don't need to be micromanaged. I don't want to, every time I want to do something, I need to have a meeting to get an approval. So that's the culture that Philip was talking about. You creating a culture where people feel that they belong. All the tools that are processes are available for the team to be competent, and at the same time they have that sense of freedom. They have that sense of, I have my own small company in a larger company, that I can make a difference, and that's where innovation comes.
Beautiful. And that's a great segue to the last question we're going to discuss in today's panel. And it's really about asking each of you to identify three pivotal factors or domains that must be systemically addressed to improve organizational performance. Ali, would you mind just refreshing us real quick, your three items there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there are three things that come to mind right away. And first is learning how to lead from a distance. I think with the pandemic, with a lot of the workforce leaders, they want to be on their own. They want to be working from a distance. Now, most of the companies struggle. There's only one organization of companies that they did not feel it as much as everybody else, and those are those who work with international suppliers, partners, and customers. To them, it's like, oh, what's the big deal? I'm used to Zoom. I do it all the time. I don't understand why people. And the smart companies reach out to those organizations and say, hey, you've been doing it for such a long time. Now everybody's doing it. Could you help us? So learning to lead from a distance. And the second one, and I think that will be very, very, is knowing that not just knowledge, but caring is really important. Knowledge without caring is no good. Caring without knowledge is not good. And the last one, and I especially right now with the technology and how much information is being dumped on us. Like Thomas Friedman said, we are drowning in an ocean of information and thirsty for knowledge. It's that, so organizations, leader, when their job is to think, how can I create a clarity? And so that by itself, it channels all that energy towards one specific area. So those are the things: learning from a distance, knowing when to care, be good at knowing and caring, and then the last one is creating clarity.
Great, thank you. Philip, could you please add to that?
Yes. So what I want to do is to approach this question from a slightly different vantage point. So when I was a VP of Human Resources for different international divisions, one of the things that we would do when we would go into a country and visit, the first thing that we would do, especially when we were at Colgate-Palmolive, a consumer products company, first thing that we would do before we would sit down and do a budget review, we would go to the marketplace and look at the products that are there and how are we doing with those products compared to others. And so that brings about one of the three pivotal domains that will impact organizational performance: understanding what's happening in the marketplace, understanding what's happening with the workforce, and also with the workplace. And so, how are people understanding what their role is in regards to the competition? How are they understanding what they need to do differently? How are they positioned with the skills and knowledge that they have in order to improve their performance in the marketplace? How are they also working together to build a cultural framework that allows them to grow, to develop, to train, and also to develop a bench strength of successors so that way they can have appropriate succession planning where people can move through the organization, and also how can they develop that in a way that helps people to understand what their career, not only what their job is now, but what is their career going to be, and what are they going to continue to learn, and how are they going to continue to grow. I mean, it comes back to some of the basic factors that we need to understand about people, that people need to understand psychologically how I can do better. I like the phrase that Stephen talked about earlier. When people get up in the morning, what are they thinking about? Well, are they thinking about just let me get this is 8 o'clock and I can't wait till it's 5 o'clock? Or are they thinking about what can I do differently during this day so that way I can contribute better to improving my company? I mean, sometimes people think it's blasphemy to say, well, I want to improve the company that I'm in. But that's your reason. That's your raison d'etre, the reason why you happen to be there at that particular time. There's nothing wrong with that. But people can improve that company framework if they also understand that what they're getting from that company is not just a paycheck. They're getting learning, they're getting new perspectives, they have people that they're working with. The workplace, the cultural framework is one. I mean, Ali talked about belonging. Do they feel a sense of belonging? Do they feel pride in the products that they have that are in the workplace? Or do they feel that, gosh, we should do something different here in order to position ourselves? Those are the three domains, looking at the context that you're operating in, not just from a micro standpoint, and thinking about what else is happening externally that has an impact on the work that you're doing. Those are the things that have to be addressed. And if you can address those simultaneously and systemically, then you're going to improve the organization's performance. Then that's when you begin to see, and I've seen it happen a number of times, is that you can see people developing the light bulb goes on and they're saying, my gosh, I can create a better product. I can create a better marketing. I can create a more efficient process. I can improve safety in my environment. I can improve the ability of people to want to come to work. And if they're not coming to work, I'm trusting them because the environment that I'm putting in place is one of trust. And if you're not, like, where is work occurring? Doesn't mean that you have to be there. It means that you can be anywhere, because with new technology that's taking place, and we're going to understand this a lot more as we get into understanding AI, with new technology, there are perspectives that can come from a number of different places. And so how do we contribute, and how are we a part of that, as opposed to letting that beat us down?
Great, thank you. Stephen, take us home. Your thoughts on the three pivotal factors?
Well, we should have had Philip go last with that passion. We should have ended on his passion. But and Philip, you stole one of my three. Bench strength was one of my three. So I'll have to segue here too. Transitioning. I think one area to help organizations do better would be teaching or learning how to transition people from being successful individual contributors to their first supervisor or managerial job. There are so many traps that people fall in. And typically, hey, Ken, if you report to me, I'll say, hey, Ken, by the way, you're going to take over the department on Monday. I'll put a memo on Friday afternoon. Congratulations, you'll do a great job. If you have any questions, give me a call, but you'll do a great job. And that's all the briefing you get to take over.
Yep, good luck and carry on.
Exactly. You're in the deep end of the pool, and hopefully you know how to swim. More specifically, There are two areas I find, and it just shocks me because I saw this in my own career. I've seen it in the 20 years I've been a consultant. So many organizations have not taught their people how to give effective feedback. And I mean by effective feedback that's actionable as well as specific and that shows the impact of what's happening and what the impact would be if somebody makes a change. And delegation. I am shocked by the number of people who don't know how to delegate effectively, who may delegate, but then start to micromanage again. And you know, Ali's right. There are some people that need micromanaging, particularly new hires. They love it. They're like dry sponges. They soak it up. But after a while, they get tired of it. They don't need it once they get that confidence level as well as their competency. And confidence is something that, going back to feedback, so many people, when they talk about feedback, focus on competency, on skills or behavior. And I think one of the key areas of feedback we should be doing is helping build people's self-confidence, their decision-making confidence, their competency in their ability to do the job. So those are my three things. Helping people transition from individual contributor into supervisor or managerial positions, and then teaching people how to, everybody, even senior executives, how to share effective feedback and how to delegate better and use a more effective delegation process.
Thank you, Stephen. So let me just take a moment to thank our panel as we close out this first of three broadcasts. I hope that our audience has enjoyed it. Please tune in for panel discussion number 2, which will be about organization culture. Thanks again for your time today, folks. Look forward to our next discussion.